Okay, you got
Good
me.
morning.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, good morning.
I do.
Is it morning for you? Are you?
It's morning somewhere.
I guess so. So what's good with Pastor Billy?
It's going to be sunny for 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, I've had a little
No,
rain cloud follow me around to my gigs lately. It feels like um,
I
it's
get
pretty
that.
annoying. Like you'll get a little 7 minute shower that might take 45 minutes out of your set, because you got to break a certain down at least, certain amount down.
You get the spray from the pond and then you don't know it's actually raining, right?
Well, the spray from the pond is not too bad. It's all right. So we are talking protests and whatnot this week. And it seems we are at
Yeah.
we're in another round of Trump being the president when a bunch of people are taking the streets really mad. And
Yes. And
I'd say the first time, it was, people were mad about Trump, but there was a lot of things going on. COVID, Black Lives Matter protests, um, in the shadow of the Me Too movement, all of that was as well.
yeah, that one seemed this one seemed better organized in a sense. But the George Floyd thing was more organic, if that makes sense. I think it grew and grew and grew.
Yeah,
Whereas this,
this protest, I believe, had been scheduled for a good while.
yeah,
It wasn't like,
it just coincided with.
yeah, with ICE going down to LA, which is what we're going to kind of talk about, and why people are protesting and you know, why they feel the need to stand up to authority. Because, I mean, this is one of those protests where it's a protest against authority. And that always changes the dynamics, when
Yeah.
it works that way.
Well, one thing I noticed today, CNN was doing, in the little bit of time I had, uh, saw a few minutes of it. They were actually doing, here's the impact of this. Shimon Prokupez went to a town that was a ghost town because everybody's afraid to be out. Um, uh, they're at least doing those stories now, talking about the fear that people have, and then talking to teenagers and young adults that their parents have been taken from them, and you know the actual human impact of that, which I think is, at least they haven't done that yet. So now they're
Right. The human impact is, it doesn't seem like we've been talking about that enough at all, does it? Just like,
no,
what we're
no,
doing
not at all.
to individual humans. I This whole thing, I think obviously to me is just sprung out of xenophobia. It's sprung out
Mm,
of saying things like, the people that are coming from, you know, Mexico, Latin America, South America are
they're sending us their
they're
criminal, their
rapists.
rapists, their murderers, their yeah.
Yeah, and then a few of them, I
And
assume,
they're
are nice
emptying
people.
their prisons. I love that one. They're emptying their prisons.
Emptying the prisons and just dumping them over here, and I mean, it's just, it's fear mongering, and it's an effective tactic. And
And it's flat out lie.
yeah, 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 right. And just what's going on as far as like how they're, going to Home Depot, going
Yeah.
to schools and picking folks up, and just again without consideration for like how that might affect the community, or people who are citizens, and what these people do. Of course, now you've got a little bit of backtracking
Yeah.
with the supposedly with the farmers and the hospitality workers, I guess. I think it's always fun when
Yeah,
Trump puts in like, and we need to make an exception for the hospitality industry because he has
yeah, because it
Mar-a-Lago
would be
and
him who would be losing
yeah,
out.
yeah, right. So
Yeah, and also,
when it happens to him, maybe we should
the
make an
day after
exception.
that, and the day after that, the orange one was is that
Oh,
we hear about. Uh, am I lost?
you were frozen for a second. Now you back. Uh,
Okay, well, yours has done that too. So,
yeah, I
um,
mean this internet
so
thing.
yeah, so he was ranting about uh the cities, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and not Miami, not that are in Republican states that also have, a large portion of a large amount per capita of immigrants, documented or otherwise.
Right.
And it's so blatantly, I'm just trying to punish Democrats for not voting for me.
I don't
You
know if
know,
it's exactly. I don't know if it's even that thought out. Uh,
you don't think it's that shallow?
I, well, I mean that's. I mean, no. I think it's even more shallow if that makes sense. Uh, oh, you're stuck for scratching your nose on the screen. Oh
I
no, there
froze
you
again,
are.
didn't I?
Yeah.
I saw
Anyway,
that.
as I was saying, is I think it's even more shallow in some ways, where it's just like they found a fear button to press, and they just press it, you know, and it doesn't matter.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what consequences are for these communities and for the nation, and because they pressed the fear button enough, now they feel like they have to like continue on with. I almost wish it was true. The folks that were saying he's not really going to do this stuff,
Yeah. Well, he is.
you know. But anyway,
You have to
so
take him at his word.
I'm mad about it. There's lots of people who are mad about it. I got in a Facebook fight over it with an old friend that didn't. Facebook fights. I guess we'll talk about it maybe as we go, but yeah, I got into a bit of a Facebook fight with an old friend who's probably not a friend now. Where he's a former military guy, and he has an opinion that if somebody is holding a flag upside down, or this is what he expressed on Facebook anyway. If somebody holds a flag upside down or burns it, or I think he also said in this post, if somebody spits on a cop in front of him, that I think he said something to say you have your first right and all First Amendment rights and all, but if you do any of these things like hold the flag upside down or burn the flag or spit on a cop in front of me, I have the right to use these hands. I think was I'm probably getting it wrong a little bit, but it's one of these things where he's basically saying if you do this certain kind of free speech that I don't like, I'm going to hit you. I don't know what that's. It's blurry. It's blurry, Billy. You voted today.
It says I voted. I voted today. Yes.
Okay. Um. So and
You speak.
so like I he and I have had like maybe this little petty thing going on where we kind of I don't know it's stupid. I have regrets about how I approached saying, "Hey man, you can't say that." You know, like I'm not. I shouldn't be trying to provoke and like be petty. You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of where we'll talk about a little bit more. But if I have regrets about a lot of my Facebook fights that I've gotten into over the years. I don't know if you have much experience in the Facebook fighting ring, Billy. You are frozen again. Real frozen. Oh, now you're moving.
Yeah, I'm.
Hmm.
I keep freezing, so I'm trying to figure out what's wrong.
Are you freezing? Oh, so you're freezing on your end as well. Like you
I
see?
see it on my end. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I don't see your videos, so I don't know what's
Uh,
working for you. So
I haven't got the video that we're doing running yet, but we're about to press play and kind of just talk about like why people are mad and why people are upset, and you know, see if there's a way to maybe talk to each other a little better. Because I know that I failed at it. Basically this week, right before the protests, saying, "Hey, man, you can't be threatening people." But I said it in the wrong way. I definitely did that. But, all right, let's watch. Mr. Hank Green here.
all right.
I'm very angry right now, and it's not for the reason that you would think. A good person would be angry right now because a bunch of people are being deported from the country without due process. When they accidentally deport American citizens, they laugh that off as if maybe these American citizens don't count as American citizens for some reason that isn't to do specifically with the law, but maybe some other way in which these people don't really count as Americans. That's in there, in the hidden part of my anger iceberg. There's a part of it that is simply these people are being treated in ways that is un-American and that we should not accept. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, and I'm going to be honest with myself, the biggest source of my anger here is that strategically, this is going to fucking work. It is a series of strategic decisions that do an excellent job of degrading America while putting more power in the hands of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And I mentioned J.D. Vance here because I think in many ways he loves this and is good at it. Now, Trump is also good at it. This is like the thing that they are the best at, is finding the rifts in American society and widening them in order to exploit them. So I'm not going to talk about whether I
So this is like a first point, right? Like the whole find a rift. I mean, there's so much going on. It's like it makes you wonder if it's a diversion a little bit.
Yeah,
As far as
I
what's
wanted
going.
to.
You're sending the Marines and the National Guard to LA to protect ICE as they're doing their thing, which this community is like, no, we don't want you doing that thing here. There's not much more we can do. We voted as the best way we could, and now you're subverting, some protocol here with the governor, and things of that nature. But like the division about it, like, wanting to get some imagery that is of like people throwing bricks and vandalization of buildings, graffiti, things of that,
Getting the wrong flag.
or well, I mean, I think especially in LA, the early protests were definitely more, like, hey, get out of our neighborhood, don't come after our people, confrontationally, like, throwing bricks type stuff, right? Which,
Right.
this is hard stuff, right? Like, this is what do you even do? Like, what do you say? Like, if you're trying to practice empathy, right? You're having empathy for people in their community that are getting their community members, their family members, ripped away unjustly. And then, at the same time, you don't want to see, like, violence of this nature where people are, throwing bricks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to figure out, where where your middle lies on this, right?
Yeah. Somebody was talking about Los Angeles in particular, and they were saying, if you are watching this from afar, you don't realize how vast Los Angeles is, that it takes hours to drive across Los Angeles. And the area that was being, in the midst of that was a very, very tiny area in comparison. And and the idea that it's all violent is just not true either. It's just those ones that are stamping it up to be violent, to throw the tear gas back and things like that.
Right. Well, I mean, when you're talking about the very initial, before a whole lot of that was going on, you're talking about people gathering outside of the federal buildings out that way, right? And some deviants, when these kind of things happen, like they're basically saying, "Hey, get out of here," and we're unruly right now. We will not comply. And that's when it gets all confrontational.
Yeah, and I think that protest that was happening last week when we were doing this show, this podcast, was a reactionary one.
Right.
Right. Here is something that happened that is tearing our community apart, and we're mad as hell, and we're going to do something about it. And we don't know what we can do, but all we can do is stand in defiance.
Right.
Versus what was happening this week
was more organized.
On Saturday, was more organized, and people saying, we're here to make a statement that we're here.
Right. Which is sometimes,
and
how
national.
That kind of works, the initial outrage, where eventually then you get groups to organize, come together, and then you have a national protest like that. So it is a good feeling that, there's so many people that are willing to, stand up against it. But again, is this a diversion just to, bomb Iran? What is going on? In terms of what his plans are. Looks like you're frozen again there, Billy. I'm gonna hit play on the hopefully this will clean up. I don't know.
I think immigration has largely been good or bad for America. I mean, it's been largely good. You don't have to believe that to keep watching this video. So here's what happened. If we take the 30,000-foot view and stop looking at each individual news story as it comes out, here's the broader context. During the administration of the last president, who was a more liberal president, there was a lot of immigration. There were a lot of refugees or people who might be refugees who he said, yes, come into the country, and then we'll slowly, because
so this is kind of the thing that happened. I don't know if I would say this is anybody's fault or whatever. It just, you had during COVID, you had a fall, and then it kind of caught up or whatever in terms of how many were here. But I don't think the how many really changes the arguments too much. To me, the how many just means we just need to be more efficient and better at it, not that we need to pick them up and throw them out.
Yeah, so I lost part of that. I think I got disconnected from the interweb.
Oh man, we lost you for a minute. Yeah. We just kept going. I was like, I'll just turn it on.
Because we don't have a lot of capacity for it, run you through the process of deciding whether or not you're a legitimate refugee and you stay in the country. I think there was a lot of problems with this way of doing things. It feels to me like fixing this or handling it or communicating it well was not on Joe Biden's list of priorities. We could talk about why that might have been. Maybe he was too old to be running the country, but hey, all right, now the liberals are mad at me. come at me. I'm not going to pretend like I don't feel that I was betrayed by all of the people who were involved in the decision to have Joe Biden run for president a second time. Whatever. You could be mad at me. It was a huge failure. So yeah, you got that, and it's going to be a weakness. It's going to be a way for the right-wing party who's traditionally...
Yeah, Biden to me was just like, the normal run-of-the-mill kind of president, if I have to look at it. I think maybe he tried to get some things done that I appreciated. And, coming out of COVID and, after Trump won, I think he had a bad deck of cards, so to speak, right?
Right.
And then on top of that, he was an old man playing those cards. But yeah, I think we all wanted, him to come in and do 4 years and then, stabilize everything. And then let's get a visionary, I don't find the argument that Harris shouldn't have been the nominee because we didn't get to do, the democratic process in the way that, it should have been done, probably with, in a voting kind of a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Biden had it, and if we were to say, when you're voting for Biden as your candidate, you are accepting that Harris certainly has a chance that she's going to be a president because he's so old.
That's
so
right.
So you're voting for the ticket, right? So for me, as switching over to Harris, I thought it was a little funky, but it wasn't something that should have changed people. Be like, well, you know what? Instead, since they didn't do this, I'm voting for Trump. That wasn't a thing that changed. You might have some people that are like, well, I'm just not going to vote then, but.
Yes. The lowest attended Sunday in churches traditionally is
Uh-oh.
Sunday following.
We got you listening to one of our past programs. We got the technical issues today.
I was trying to, Carla says she hadn't found the link to the Facebook things.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. So anyway, Hank, he's expressing why he's mad. So I'm kind of vibing with him.
Anti-immigrant to come at people and tell stories that are bad. Let's actually look at J.D. Vance talking about this recently with Ross Douthat.
I really do think that social solidarity is destroyed when you have too much migration too quickly. And so that...
What does that mean, social solidarity? I'm going to rewind that again. J.D. Vance is...
He uses words. He
has his words, right? So he says social solidarity is threatened when you have too much immigration. And what do you mean?
Let's actually look at J.D. Vance talking about this recently with Ross Douthat.
I really do think that social solidarity is destroyed when you have too much migration too quickly. And so that's not because I hate the migrants or I'm motivated by grievance. That's because I'm trying to preserve something in my own country where we are a unified nation.
So social solidarity can be destroyed when you have too much migration too quickly is a thing that he thinks. And so you might then wonder at some of the mechanisms by which that occurs. And one of those might be a president and vice presidential candidate running for office talking about how Haitian immigrants eat pets publicly, frequently, in the middle of an election.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Would that be one of the mechanisms by which social solidarity is decreased when there's too much immigration? Is it the immigration that is the problem, J.D. Vance? Or is it perhaps instead that you, a politician, one of the most powerful men in the country, are very happy to use it as a wedge issue to get more attention, to control the narrative, and to get yourself more power? Is that something that we need to price into immigration? Hey, just so you know, we can't do too much immigration. Otherwise, assholes like me are going to use it as a wedge issue, tearing to some extent at the fabric of the country while making Americans afraid of people who are working here legally, trying to better themselves and the country so that they can themselves become American citizens, which is a story as old as America. It's just the kind of dishonesty that makes me very upset, because he never says that he thinks immigrants are bad in this interview, but then he will absolutely go on Twitter and say that Haitian immigrants are eating people's pets. And then when that turns out not to have happened, they just move on and ignore it, because the point is the narrative, it isn't truth. Anyway, that's a part of my anger here.
I mean, it is the narrative, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what they're trying to push.
And they've been very effective. Don't forget the Colorado, Denver stuff that they tried to put forth. And, even though the mayor there, the police chief was saying this is not the reality. And then they found one woman who's upset, and
You're talking about the apartments.
Yeah.
I was confused at what you're talking about, the Denver, Colorado stuff. Yeah, the apartments
Well,
where they said the gangs had taken over the apartments.
I happened to be driving through that community when they were doing that. Carla and I had gone to Denver, and we were just driving down, I forget the name of the road that goes all the way across Denver, and we were in that community, and I didn't see anything that was dangerous, except me driving in Denver. But I don't know. It's just as hate is a vicious thing, and it's amazing to me that it also sells.
But I mean, you can say it like in a way, like the way he said it, social solidarity. They're not like us. That's what that means, right?
Yeah, it means we're not all white. That we're not all white middle class, and he's upper class financially.
I mean, I guess, but just like they're not like us, like that's at minimum, it's that, right? We could probably extrapolate, but at minimum, they're not like us. Too much of it means there's too much of it not like us, and it's just, you can see right through it, right?
Yeah.
Here is the dishonesty and the mealy-mouthed BS that these people get away with. But the bigger piece, the real reason for my anger, is that strategically, this is gonna work. And here's the strategy. First, do deportations, but do it in a way where you have the least possible regard for people's humanity and also their rights. So suspend due process. Say illegal immigrants don't get due process. Now, how do you determine whether they are illegal immigrants in that process? I don't know, because you're not doing due process. When you accidentally deport American citizens, what do you do in that situation? You laugh about it. When the Supreme Court tells you have to bring those people back, tell them you're not so sure about that. Kick off a little constitutional crisis. Every step along the way, do things that are like just illegal enough and just immoral enough that many people will feel that there is no alternative but to protest in force, not only protest to make their voices heard, but to literally try and stop law enforcement and ICE from doing what they have been told to do. At which point you have a rule of law problem. Can the person who has been told to do something in the chain of command not do their job because there's a person in front of them? At that point, you have that conflict, and you're very, very close at that point to a riot. You do your best to be as immoral and illegal about it as possible, to make it so that many people believe that the right thing to do is to stop an ICE agent from doing what they have been told to do. So you have two people who feel that it is their obligation to do opposite things in a physical space, and so you have actual conflict and that erupt in violence. Now, people will say they could just do it non-violently, just put on suits and march through the streets. But if you think that these policies and the suspension of due process is illegal, which, by the way, the Supreme Court does too, then it makes sense that you might physically try and stop a person who thinks they are enforcing the law from breaking the law. This is a situation that inevitably will create conflict, and in my opinion, this is a situation that is intended to create conflict. But here's what we now have. We have sides. You can be on the side that's seen this video.
You had something to say there?
I said true. That's exactly what he's doing. Is trying to put things into a place where conflict will happen.
I mean, it benefits him.
Right.
or you could be on the side that's seen this picture. And those are two different sides, and they love sides. This is strategically fantastic. It is excellent. Control the narrative, look strong, have our opponents look like they're defending violence and attacks on the country. The strategy is very good, but you can only implement it if you don't care about the rules of the nation, which include due process. I'm editing this video and I need to pop in here because I keep saying due process. The Supreme Court says it's important. It's important. You can't not do it. But I'm not saying why, and I need to say why. Because if you can grab somebody off of the street and deport them without checking to see whether or not they are in this country legally, then that's just kidnapping. And so it makes sense to me, if that's literally what the president is saying he wants to do, that some people would try to physically stop ICE from implementing that policy. The way that the president...
So this is what puts like this is why it becomes a paradox. This is why you have, like if you're looking to have empathy for the people who are getting, ripped up from their homes and from their communities, and the people who want to stop that, this is the way you do it. You say, look, they don't have much recourse, right? Other than
Right.
a physical altercation, right? Now they're not, they're not bringing guns or anything at this point, but it ends up being a nationwide, cry, really, as it progresses through the weekend.
Yeah, and I think we come back to that, talking about the humanity of the situation. Desperation leads you to try to do whatever you can, when what he's saying is, they've put it in a way that if I can not have due process, means I literally can take anybody off the street because they look a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you don't have to even worry about their looks. It just doesn't flat out matter, because you don't have due process, and they can just say, you have to have due process where you can at least prove it. Yeah.
The whole point is due process is necessary, but that gives them the authority to say, oh, well, if you look like you're from another country, and guess how we figure that out? You don't look white.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even you don't look black in the right way. Because it's mostly brown people we're talking about in this scenario.
So what do you say to a member of your church who comes to you with questions about like how to feel about seeing people throw bricks at cars and burning a robo car? Did you see that, the Waymos or whatever that are the robot cars that were getting burned?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to talk about the desperation first off. But for me, the conversation, if somebody's coming complaining about that and saying, see these liberals, this is what they're doing.
Well, maybe they're not even saying like, see these liberals, that's what they're doing,
Right, they're just disturbed. Yeah,
they're just disturbed. I get being disturbed. How do you guide them in this?
I think the best thing you can do in that case, in my opinion, is just have a conversation. Why do you think they're behaving that way? And listen to why they think that, so you can understand why it disturbs this person. If somebody's coming to me, the other part is, asking from a theological standpoint, how do you think Jesus would have reacted here? You mentioned in our pre-conversation a little bit about the overturning of tables.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the kind of thing that would piss Jesus off.
The ice raids,
the way the ice raids are being conducted, the intentional meanness of it. And as we were just saying, the idea that you can just bypass the rules because it dehumanizes people. If you can just take people off the street, you can take anybody off the street if there's no due process.
What does Jesus have to say about justice?
Well, the Bible entirely is justice is a really big deal, you know. But what Jesus had to say starts, I think, with the Sermon on the Plain, which comes from the Gospel of Luke, rather than the Sermon on the Mount, which people are more familiar with. Sermon on the Mount says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Sermon on the Plain says, "Blessed are the poor."
Mm-hmm.
Jesus began his ministry by quoting Isaiah and saying, "I've come to deal with the oppression." I'm not quoting; I'm just saying. I came to deal with justice. I came to say oppression is bad. I should always have that in my head better. Whenever I want to quote it, I never can. But if that's how you begin, you set a tone that says, this is what's important to me. And, Jesus doesn't talk about homosexuality. He doesn't talk about all the hot button issues of our society today. He doesn't talk about posting the 10 Commandments anywhere. He talks about caring for your neighbor. He talks about loving your enemy. He talks about, stopping oppression. He talks about healing the blind and going after trying to make a difference for the people who are struggling the most in society. And that's, I think, rather important. But we seem to, the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way, make the path straight. I'm trying to get back to the Isaiah text and I'm failing miserably. Mm-hmm. But the Beatitudes in the Gospel of Luke are different than the ones in the Gospel of Matthew. And I think it's important for people to sometimes hear those because they seem to be more, they seem to me to be more original, so to speak. So, I mean, Jesus is all about, here's the quote, by the way. "Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor." How are we doing that? How are Christians who are defending this bringing good news to the poor? How are Christians
that are defending ICE's actions and the president's
and the way,
initiatives?
It's one thing to say we have an immigration problem. It's another thing to say we have an immigration problem, so it gives us the authority and the right, and it's a good Christian value to be mean-spirited, to be hateful, to be dehumanizing people, and that somehow is what's important. So bring good news to the poor, proclaim release to the captives, recovering of sight to the blind, and let the oppressed go free. Those are, that's a profound statement to begin your ministry and say, this is what I'm about. And by the way, shortly after that, they wanted to throw him off a cliff, It's the narrative of the church is often that Jesus died for our sins and that he came to be a sacrifice. Well, that's partly true, but let's be clear, the reason he died, the reason that people wanted to kill him, was because he was overturning society. He was overturning what was important. Mm-hmm. The poor were important. The people that were oppressed were important. And the turning the tables, as we mentioned earlier, it was about, taking advantage of poor people. He was upset because they were allowing that in the temple. They were allowing the exploiting of poor people. Because what would happen is people would travel to Jerusalem from, all over the place, and rather than bring their sacrifices with them, they would purchase their sacrifices. Well, they didn't have money so they had to exchange their money. and the money exchangers were gouging them and taking advantage of the poor for religious purposes. And, Jesus was pretty upset about that, as he should be. And so for me, the idea that Christians would stand with this ideology that says it's okay, these aren't real people because they're not real citizens, is just...
But it doesn't even matter as far as due process is concerned, though.
Right.
Because,
so what they're really saying is they're not real people.
Yeah,
they don't matter, whoever
exactly.
they are.
Because as far as the Constitution is concerned, everybody gets due process. It doesn't say citizens; it says persons specifically.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And as this situation points out, that's vital, because if the purpose of you ripping them off the street is because you think they're not a citizen, they need to have due process to prove that they are, for one thing. And it's quite awful. By the way, Carla said she couldn't find us on YouTube or Facebook, so, and I noticed we have no comments.
We have no chatters today either, so
yeah. So I wonder if there's something.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm. Let's see. No, it's there. There you are on Twitch talking. So Twitch is working. It looks as if. No, it's working on YouTube. I think.
Very interesting.
I think, but I couldn't tell you for sure. Although
it has the end stream button, so therefore it should be streaming, right? Then, I don't know how to find us on YouTube. I still can't.
Let's see. It says we got one watching us on
Jessica.
It might be Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it.
Oh, there she is. Yes, hi. So we do have. It's just we're having a slow night. People don't want to talk about the protests. It is what it is.
Well, Carla was going to watch, but she couldn't get it on Facebook, and I didn't know how to do it.
Maybe it's in the just go to my page, I think. I don't know.
President of the United States talks about this, makes it pretty clear to me that he just wants to pick people up off the street and send them away without checking to see whether or not they are here legally or whether or not they are American citizens. And I'll let you listen to what he has to say on this topic yourself.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know. It seems it might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. But some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
I'm a little sick of being like, what's the Constitution say? And not, why does the Constitution say what it says? So I think it's important to say, if you don't have to have a process by which you deport someone, you can deport anyone. And that's not deportation. It's a blank check for doing whatever you want to anyone in this country. It's the kind of thing that if it were being suggested by a Democrat would be seen immediately for what a lot of people are afraid it is in this case, which is just a way to attack anyone you don't like in such an extreme manner that many people will simply stop criticizing this administration at all. I just think we need to take a step back and remember why we have laws in this country. It's not because somebody wrote it down. It's because they were good ideas. It is a good idea to not let the government punish someone without checking to see whether they did a crime first. And yet they seem to be trying to build this case that the courts are somehow this new problem.
They're also trying to say just by not having the document, like being here is the crime. Right.
Well, yeah. What's the guy's name? I always forget. The guy is in charge of this whole thing. That's what he said. He would say in one breath, "We're only going after the worst criminals," and then he would then turn around and say, "Well, if you broke the law, you're a criminal."
Yeah, I mean that's the same as like
a misdemeanor.
Yeah, it's like a traffic ticket.
Yeah. So
You
you
know,
got a speeding ticket, you're going to Nicaragua or to
or
El Salvador or
yeah,
I'm glad I only got a warning a few weeks ago,
I I think one of the things that I get frustrated is because I just don't really understand. Like, what do you do with somebody that's been living here for 7 years? You know,
Yeah. So I may have shared this before.
where do you put those
I
people?
have I have a friend that I don't see her much at all, only through Facebook these days, but she owns and operates a restaurant around the corner from one of the churches I used to serve in Etowah, Tennessee. It is a Italian restaurant. She's Mexican. Um,
Oh,
she
that's what the quotations were for.
Yeah, because they serve pizza and spaghetti and
Sure.
lasagna and things like that. Um, it's not a high-end restaurant. It was a great place to go and sit and have a lunch and she was just a friendly person and she's the owner and she was out there and she hired people that nobody else would hire. Um, and she is a citizen. She did not come here as a citizen. She did not come here legally. She was undocumented as a child. And then I think they actually went through the whole process of going back and coming back. And her father had a restaurant in Chicago and et cetera, et cetera. But long story short, she's now a citizen. And she posted on Facebook shortly after the Orange one took office and said, um, I am more afraid now while driving while brown on a Wednesday than I was when I was undocumented. And when I shared that with my congregation, one couple left, never came back. The church's role ought to be able to.
Did they tell you why?
They didn't tell me why, they just stopped coming, but they told somebody else why. Well, he was talking, we agree with immigration is a bad thing. And we agree that, and the guy who was sharing this with me is a very right-wing person who ironically sort of dates a Democrat, a very liberal Democrat. And he said, he's on my committee that discusses concerns. And he said, I'm concerned that you're getting too political. And I'm like, well, if you'd like me to not be political, let's take the flags out of the sanctuary. I'll fight you on that. He doesn't see that
Did he say
that's
that?
political. He didn't say those words, but that's what he said. He said, I will stand up against that or something like that. I will always, yeah, I think he actually used the word fight at one point. Not fight me physically, but I'll
But
fight
fight
that.
against it, right?
Right. But he was saying that was too political. And I did not talk about the immigration policy. I was talking about understanding that for people who are brown, who have been non-citizens and are citizens, what do you do with them as a church? How do we stand with those people who shouldn't feel fear from their government? And so and the irony of all this guy, not the couple that left, this guy that was saying all this for years, and I mean many years, has hosted in his little farmhouse, and I mean little farmhouse, wood stove, big barn outside with old tractors and old cars. He hosts students from a local college, international students. And he doesn't understand that these policies are going after them too.
Mm.
That if they're from the wrong country, there was a couple of guys that came to the church one Sunday morning, and they were obviously not from around here. They were Filipino. One of them was Filipino. I forget where the other guy was from now. And both of them came to see him, and they wanted to connect up with him again, and and then there was another guy that came at Christmas, and he had stopped by. He was on his way to go to Pennsylvania to go to college, the next level of college. And I'm like, how do you not see this? how do you not see, how do you not understand that the policies are causing fear in their lives, whether they're here legally or not? Because right now, visas are being revoked because students came from the wrong country, because they're the wrong color. Things like that are happening. And it pisses me off too. And that Christian folks are defending this hatred, meanness.
And it just doesn't seem to have any kind of like biblical backing, so to speak.
No, none at all. not any at all.
I mean, I don't know about none at all because I couldn't tell you for sure if there wasn't some.
I'm telling you, there's none at all.
You don't think that
there just isn't.
You don't think that there's a scripture out there that somebody might say, no, this is pro or anti-immigration or something like that?
No, because first off,
somebody might be able to bend it, is what I'm saying. There might be something.
Nations with borders didn't exist then, first off. It's a new thing. Borders are actually pretty new. Yeah, you had the Great Wall of China setting a border up, but the idea of an actual border, a line through sand somewhere, is really a newer thing. I did some research on it. Granted, it was internet research. It's way newer than you might imagine.
Right.
And so nation didn't, in the scripture, in Old Testament scripture and in New Testament scripture, nation doesn't mean what we think it means today. It meant a people, an ethnic identity. So the nation of Israel wasn't a place, it was a people. The nation of, Palestine wasn't a place, it was a people. And it's so any of the texts that people have said, tried to use to defend, we've got to get God back in the country, those quotes that they use, they're not talking about a nation state with borders and such. They're talking about a people.
Right.
And now, some people would argue, well, so even the scripture that was used for a long, long time to say that couples from different races couldn't marry because of certain texts that they saw that said they shouldn't mix.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. It seems like there's places in the Bible where people will,
but the Bible
they cherry pick it the wrong way, is what I'm saying.
Right. But the Bible is very pro immigration.
I mean, that's what I would think too. Jesus himself, sort of the main character. I don't know about the main character, but sort of, at least a big part of it.
And it may be a little overblown to say, well, Jesus was an refugee. It's not. We have this story of him going to Egypt to escape persecution. The story probably isn't true, but this whole idea is there. It's right there in the book of Matthew that Jesus went to Egypt to be saved. They took him as a baby, and he was, a DACA kid.
DACA. He's a dreamer. Jesus is a dreamer. I mean, just like John Lennon said. Right?
Which thing of John Lennon's? Imagine?
Some people say I'm a dreamer. I'm not the only one.
Right, exactly.
I'm making bad jokes.
Hey, John Lennon is a good theologian sometimes. So
I would agree with that.
In the way of what the president legally should be able to do. JD Vance keeps getting up on stages and saying that the courts are stopping the president from doing what he is constitutionally bound to do. And I'm like, you haven't read the document, my guy. What do you mean? The Supreme Court is the one responsible for enforcing the document, not the president. That's how we set it up. Balance of powers is good. And one person having all the power is bad because that's a king and there should not be kings. That's how we started this out, man. I know you've been reading all that Curtis Yarvin. You think maybe monarchy is cool now, but it's not. That's not what we did. I still believe in this country.
Are you familiar with Curtis Yarvin?
Never heard him.
Oh, maybe I should have maybe pulled him up. Let's see if I can pull him up real quick. Curtis Yarvin. So this guy, he's like somehow become this like intellectual center for a lot of this kind of thought, right? There's a lot to it. I don't want to. I mean, it's a big old Wikipedia, which is yeah. So the Dark Enlightenment, real political power is held by something he calls the cathedral, right? So universities, mainstream press, is used to collude, and which I don't know, man. There's a lot of out there stuff that this guy, but he's this is the big deal, right? Like he's the one that has the money behind this guy's ideas. So there's maybe we might need to do a I guess a expose, I don't know, something on this guy. But that's when he's saying Curtis Yarvin, that's who he's referencing right there. Is a guy that's kind of like got some of this intellectual thought about what I guess Hank here is talking about. Like we need a monarchy again is I think kind of what Yarvin is saying, sort of.
Well, certainly the orange one thinks that.
He wants that for sure.
Monarchy is cool now, but it's not. That's not what we did.
I think Jessica's behind.
I still believe in this country, and I know a lot of you people watching this don't anymore.
I'm trying to figure
I still believe in this country, and when you
because she says I'm here, I'm someone. What she doesn't realize is when we said nobody's here, she's not just now seeing that, so she's behind and she's chatting at us from our past,
way back.
Yeah, our past
That's
selves.
Like 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jess.
You do this shit, it makes me believe in it less. Like eventually I won't anymore. And that's makes me fucking mad. And because it's a good strategy, one thing I know as a strategist, you don't stop pushing good strategy until it stops being good strategy. And so I don't see any reason why they would stop doing this, because they want riots. They want violence. They want conflict. They want deeper rifts in society. That's the goal. And so of course they're going to keep doing this, and they will do what they can to make it more inflammatory so that people are more likely to protest and more likely to have those conflicts that result in outbreaks of violence. I love LA, man. I used to hate LA, but I love LA. Like I came around eventually. There's good people there. It's a big city, big diverse city. Crazy number of people. I live in Montana. We have like 10 times fewer people in our whole state. I got a fair number of Fox News viewers in my life, and they think that they're like scared for me when I go to LA. This is of course ludicrous, but being able to push this narrative is going to make them so scared, and Los Angeles was the right place to do it, but it won't be the last place. I just feel like this is so good for them that they will do it wherever they can. Because when the Constitution doesn't matter to you, when people's rights don't matter to you, that's really scary, because that means that theoretically anyone, but we all know why I feel safe and other people don't. Theoretically, though, anyone could be deported, and then it accidentally turns out that was an American citizen. I'm not worried about that. Why? Let's ask ourselves why. We know why. I count as an American for some reason that you can articulate, whereas another American citizen might feel like less of an American to some people. If you don't care about that stuff, or I think even maybe more fundamentally, you don't care about the country holding itself together to progress toward a better future, and you're more interested in fanning flames and deepening rifts and taking advantage of people's fear, this is a great strategy. And I am angry because ultimately, deeply, even more than anything about the future of America, and like, just to be totally honest here, like there's a component of jealousy to my anger, because this is strategically a great move. And I'm jealous that people who I think would do a better job of leading the country don't have access to a move like this, and also don't have a counter move that works well against it. The thing that I keep coming down to is like,
it's called taking the high road, Billy. taking the high road
Yeah, I
is
know.
it's
They go low, we go high.
yeah, but you know, what they're doing is a low road move, creating the fear and the division and you know,
Yeah, sometimes it sucks being the one that has to take the high road. I mean, anybody who's a leader, certainly as a pastor, I sometimes have to swallow my pride, so that somebody doesn't get hurt or offended, because you're trying not to rock the boat in the wrong ways sometimes, um, and or just simply as the person in the power position, you kind of have to step back and let that person blame you for stuff you didn't do. Because if you try to defend yourself, you just make yourself, it works, it backfires. And I think that's, true in this case, where if Democrats, for instance, were to fire back by the same methods, they would just use that and say, it's a, um, was the what was the chant we used to say as kids? I'm rubber, you're glue. you know, it's
um
kind of that argument.
I think it's clear they want us to be, in conflict with each other,
Yeah, I agree with that too.
uh, or at least I don't know, man. There's a. It seems clear that, but
Well, and also that,
none of this
like,
makes sense though. A lot of it's just none of it makes sense.
right, and another part of it is they want to claim we're standing up for free speech, when in fact they're trying to say, if you don't think like we do, uh, your speech isn't valid. And they have a semi-valid argument that liberals did the same thing, and says, we don't want to hear your conversation if it's,
Hmm.
and so that's where divide happens, is that we invalidate somebody else's
Right.
opinion or idea or whatever. I,
See,
I
this is
think
kind of like
that,
what happened with me in my Facebook fight that I had this week with my old
yeah,
friend. Um, him as a military person. Like I said, if I'm doing the empathetic thing, if I'm trying to say why is he so mad that he thinks he should be hitting people,
right,
I shouldn't be trying to throw a little passive aggressive answer to him, right?
yeah,
I should be trying to maybe say, hey man, I understand that you're a Marine. Seeing that kind of stuff is frustrating to you. If I were to do it, on the side, I could say, hey, I'd like to say that I think a lot of these people, when they're protesting by burning the flag or stomping on the flag or turning it upside down or whatever, uh, it's just not about the military. It's not commentary on the military. It's just commentary on the government, right? But I understand that
yeah,
also that's just maybe just, some people are going to have a hard time seeing it as anything else but just a personal insult or an insult to what they stand for, even though I would say the flag is a thing that stands for a thing. So one of those things is the Constitution, and the Constitution, the very first amendment, is regarding free speech.
protect those rights. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was upset when Judge Alito's house had an upside down American flag on it, because of the statement he was trying to make, and then claiming his wife made the misstatement and he didn't have anything to do with it, and all that kind of stuff. I was
It's
upset
just
about that.
people protest, right? Like
Right, exactly.
you can't threaten them, for doing their.
There was a guy that
But
I
also,
saw
I
this
shouldn't,
week that,
for me, I shouldn't be provoking people, and not trying to understand why they're so mad. I need to be empathetic and try to understand why somebody's so mad, and not try to poke the bear even
right.
further. It's beneath what I'm trying to be, but
Yeah, but then there's also a hypersensitivity to anything that isn't, when it comes to military stuff. There's just this hypersensitivity. So when I go to a baseball game, do I really have to hear the national anthem? Do we really have to do the national anthem? Okay, let's do the national anthem. We're doing the national anthem now. No one will ever take that away because now it's offensive if you take it away, if you don't do
Right.
it.
I mean, you
Oh,
have these
why is that?
traditions, right? You
Yeah,
have these
why?
traditions.
And it wasn't a tradition that existed for a long, long time. It was something that kind of got started at a certain time in American history. Well,
It's
now
a
you go to a baseball game and the seventh inning stretch, and now you get, instead of take me out to the ball game, you get, we got to hear God Bless America.
really, they don't do take me out of the ball game
Yeah,
too, at least.
sometimes they do. Some stadiums do both. But why God Bless America? Well, because 9/11. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, but we don't still do something for Pearl Harbor. Um,
Right.
I and so, if I get, like, I don't know that we need to keep, first off, I don't really like us singing God Bless America in the first place. Because as a Christian, that's a kind of a Christian nationalist anthem.
Sure. As an atheist,
And
we just roll our eyes.
well, I do
We
too.
get it. We get it. We're just like, okay.
Yeah.
Do
I
do we
went to
get do we get annoyed, like with that kind of stuff? Maybe a little bit, but it's like, I think they're just trying to say, we're special, or
exactly, that is exactly what
we're
it is.
special, and we're hopeful for our specialness. Like we're
Right.
hopeful.
And
It's a
and then
hopeful
you
song. I
have
don't
to
want to be mean
understand
about
that
it.
but if a stadium stopped doing that, the backlash from the people on the right in particular would be very pronounced.
Hmm.
Why are
I
you
mean,
doing that? You're taking America out of it. And
what do
you
you feel
know,
about the Pledge of Allegiance?
oh, I don't do the Pledge of Allegiance if I can avoid it.
But I'm just saying, like in schools and public schools, do you think?
I think it's perfectly fine. I think we should go back to the original pledge,
Without
not
the
the
under
one that
God
they're doing
part?
now, without the under God part. I think that it's perfectly fine for a nation to have a pledge of allegiance to their flag, but I think it's completely inappropriate in the church.
Yeah.
Um, and as a Christian, I don't think Jesus said you can only have one master.
I probably
And
fall a little bit differently for like I don't mind children being taught the pledge, but like a daily morning affirmation to me feels a little pushy to me.
you mean having them do it every morning?
I mean, like, listen, when I first started doing the Pledge of Allegiance, I had no idea what the word pledge means.
Right, exactly.
Like I
It's an
pledge. Like, what do you
indoctrination.
mean? What I pledge? Like I'm 5. I don't know what pledge means. Allegiance.
That's right.
I pledge
Yeah.
allegiance. What does allegiance mean?
We didn't even know if we were saying the right words.
But but early on they hype you up for this. Like this is patriotic. This is us, supporting our country. This is, we're going to do this every day for your entire life until you get out of high school.
Yeah.
It's a
And
little.
but I'm always annoyed when somebody refuses to do the Pledge of Allegiance and people get upset with them. And they're doing it because of religious reasons. And then they're the same people that would turn around and say, well, we're not doing this because of religion. We're not going to get a vaccine because of religious reasons, when there is no religious reason to not get a vaccine. I don't care whether you're Jew or Christian, there's nothing in the Bible that says no vaccine.
I mean, the thing about religious reasoning is that you can make it up as you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Bit.
Deeply held religious
Yeah.
belief is code for, if I don't like something, I just claim that.
Yeah, I mean, or I don't think it has to be necessarily Christian. I mean, anybody can just
No,
say it's.
just deeply held religious beliefs, period.
Yeah.
And that can be Christian, it can be Jewish, it can be Muslim, it can be Hindu, it can be, I'm a spiritual stone reader, whatever. Um, it just is, it kind of bothers me. And a part of that is, so you have to understand this hyper patriotism being forced into the sanctuary of a church
Mm-hmm.
that is set aside for one purpose. And that purpose is to worship God. And then they want to put the commandments up, And they forget the first commandment is no other gods before me. And one of them other commandments is no other idols either. And so we sanctify, we set aside the sanctuary for a purpose. And then we want to bring in flags and we want to do patriotic things in there. And I'm like, but that's the opposite of what this place is about. And what you're doing is breaking those commandments by doing it. And if you do that, well, you know, we wouldn't be able to worship if we didn't have our Constitution. I'm like, that's BS. There are Russian people that have been Christian for the entire time of the Soviet Union. There are people all over the world that have worshiped in different ways, whether they're Christian or whatever, under persecution from their nation. You just want it to be that easy all the time. So it's not that we can't be Christian without the Constitution. It's that we have freedom because of the Constitution and because of those that died for the protection of the Constitution, because of those who have gone to battle. All those kind of things are true, but not to the point of saying the church wouldn't exist without that. And keep in mind the purpose of another one of the purposes for this nation was that people had the freedom to be in whatever religion they chose. And
right. And anytime that you're, pushing one more than maybe the other, I mean, that is fascism, right? Like
exactly.
That is, if
that's what the king did,
this is why I'm like, what was it that Vance said?
Social solidarity.
Social solidarity. I mean, this is the same kind of stuff that he's saying. Like, we want to make sure that they have the same religion as us for sure, and they, we want to make sure that they look like us. And too much of it at once is too much of a shock to the system. It just, and
right.
that kind of stuff bothers me, man.
And the irony is that, Hispanic folks are largely Catholic, and I'm.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, they're brown, so that doesn't count.
They don't count as Catholics either.
Yeah. That's
And then there's the whole anti-Catholic movement within the evangelicals that's been around for decades and decades and decades.
I mean, the Catholics and the Protestants. And I guess since we're talking about it, we can just talk about the Church of England too. They don't like each other. They.
Right. Yeah. And us United Methodists, we come out of that.
Right.
We came out of the Anglican Church. We didn't come out of the Protestant Reformation. Our stuff happened later.
All right, let's see what he's got a couple more minutes here. Hank, and then we'll take a look at some pictures from the protests in Knoxville, and maybe talk about a couple more things.
Is that like maybe there's a strategy here where we just keep reminding people that what these people want is for Americans to be more afraid of each other and of their world. And they want Americans to be on sides. They want to create more sides so that they can exploit that conflict. And that just does so much damage to the country. They just don't care how much they hurt the country as long as it brings them a little more power. There's like this guy on Twitter who talks about like men's clothing, and he makes fun of conservatives sometimes. They call him the menswear guy. And this person says, the menswear guy just openly admitted on here that he's in America illegally. JD Vance, I know you're reading this, and you have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever. We got Jack Nicholson nodding yes here. I just never know, and this is part of the strategy. I never know if he's like, yes, I will absolutely use the power of the federal government to go after my enemies specifically, or if he's just making a cute little joke on Twitter. And I think that's part of like why when he posts things like this, he gets to like have a little giggle to himself, because he knows we don't know. Only he knows. And that's a special kind of power that he gets to have as the Vice President of the United States. And I'm sure in his mind, the future president, if we let that happen. To wrap up my wrap up here, it is 24 hours after I recorded that video, and I'm feeling a little bit of less certainty about whether or not this strategy is as good as they think it is. I don't know if it is possible to show the peaceful elements of this protest enough that it breaks through to like the sort of middle. It certainly isn't going to reach the people who are like only inside of the Fox News ecosystem, but like maybe it can reach a lot of other people with the reality that there's a lot of grandmas here, there's a lot of peaceful protesting here, and also there's a really legitimate thing to be protesting here. I saw a video on TikTok from a young man that I'm going to put in the description that if you have watched this video all the way through, I really think you should finish this content viewing session with his video. I'll try and find it more than just on TikTok, because I know not everybody has TikTok, but oftentimes you can watch TikToks even if you don't have the app. I was feeling really hopeless yesterday. That was part of my anger. And watching his video reminded me that this is part of the thing that we're doing right now. Like, this is going to be a long process of Donald Trump being president and doing his best to accumulate more and more power. Is this particular issue going to be one that he's winning on for the most part for a while? Probably. But the deeper story here is actually compelling, and I think has an advantage in that it also is the truth. So watch this young man's video. I learned quite a bit from it. It's linked in the description.
All right, we'll try to watch that. Oh, I need the sound. There it is.
Ways. Glendale just canceled its ICE contract. These are LA's win conditions. That's it. So any municipal breakaways, Glendale just canceled its ICE contract. That's precedent, because every city that follows turns protests into a policy cascade. So the goal is just to turn LA into the first domino, and it puts public pressure on Santa Ana, Long Beach, etc. to follow suit. The second win condition is any public moral awakening. NPR time to finally portraying protesters as concerned citizens and not just rioters. The goal is just to keep centering family stories, detain workers, union arrests, and make the morality too heavy to ignore, because the public is starting to distinguish between federal cruelty and local compassion. The third win condition is lawsuits and oversight. So California's AG, their Attorney General Rob Bonta, just sued over unauthorized federal enforcement, right? Back this lawsuit with mass mobilization. This turns any narrative into legal leverage, but also cross-city solidarity. So San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, Houston, they all had their spin-off protests. If a synchronizing message emerges out of this, 5 to 7 cities chanting the same demand at the same time, it'll overwhelm the federal media control immediately. But there's key risks. And we're going to go through those too. There is currently no unified demand. In the raids is vague. That is not going to work. Protect sanctuary cities by law. That's a little better. Abolish ICE is polarizing. We need to be concerned about the message. Movements without demands become media spectacles without memory. Any rally that is behind winnable asks, like emergency citywide ICE moratorium, that's a way to fix that. That's the way to rally behind that, because that's something better to say than in the raids. Emergency citywide ICE moratorium. See what I mean? Get that narrative together. Then here's our other risk. Violent optics do persist. Like really bad. Burning cars, highway blocks, tactical gear versus flag bearers. The medium turns the just cause into a chaotic image of fear and disruption. So visual peace with narrative cohesion is necessary, right? Narrative precision, visual peace, protest art, grandmothers on the front lines, cultural symbols of peace. There's a way things need to look. This is what I mean by the narrative warfare. But here's another thing. So Trump frames the protest before the protest framing itself is a major risk. He's already calling it an uprising, open border insurrection, and seditious. So they see that as a test of strength, not justice. So if the story is about control, he wins. So the only way out of that kind of thing is to reclaim the stage. Publicly framing it as a moral emergency, not even a political one. Turn this into the next George Floyd level infliction by showing its human stakes, legal violations, and constitutional breach. Now here's one of those things I want to say to black people. Our grief has already been militarized. They've already targeted us enough. We don't need to send our support, like physically, on the ground. No. But they will come for us with this method. This is very key to watch. Very key to watch and to document. Please pay attention here. This is not, like, even though the stay out of his side is what I agree on, it is important to document what their tactics look like. It really is. But here's the other risk. any type of movement fragmentation. Because without visible leadership or a unified communication, even internal allies are unsure what just even comes next out of this. So local energy won't translate into national momentum. We need a rotating spokesperson like faith leaders, union reps, dreamers, just any morning brief. Just open up. You don't need permission. Just open up in the morning, just talking about the situation yourself. It doesn't even matter if it has views. We need documentation. That's the big thing. This literally needs to be psychological jujitsu. We need to use their spectacle against them, humanize faster than they can militarize, and render the invisible visible in this case. The messaging also needs to be a lot stronger, because they needs to be like, we're not radical.
Yeah, he says, make the invisible visible. And, one of the things that they always say is, riots and protests are, the language of the unheard, right? So what he's trying to say, we need to do this without being, this is the way we do this without like giving them the imagery that they want to say that this is conflict. The grandmothers, right?
Look at the example of the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
The Black Panther group was polarizing because white people saw them as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
But the Dr. King side of
I would say that Dr. King had, in the moment, had quite a bit of detractors.
He did, sure. But
Yeah.
a big part of what was effective was, one of the big turning points was that bridge in Selma. And the reason it was is because this was peaceful people walking across a bridge, being beaten, fire hoses against them. They went to prison, and they
just protested.
They didn't.
Yeah.
They just did. If they were arrested, that was a good thing. They believed in overwhelming the prisons, the jails, because if they can't afford to, small towns can't afford to.
Well, that's the whole point
all
of
these people.
When you have people mobilize in this way and they say we don't comply. Well, what they're saying is, if we have enough people and we decide not to comply, there's nothing you can do about it.
Right, exactly.
Because you only get to police us by our complicity.
But the other part of that story was the visual. They knew how to use television. The visuals of innocent people being attacked by dogs, fire hoses, and beaten by police turned the tide on the movement, because decent white people who were, not for, they just need to wait longer and all of that kind of stuff, saw that and went, oh, wait, that's wrong. And they saw that. And that's what the challenge here is you can't use the violence is what they want to see.
Right.
That's why
they want to say that the LA is burning down to the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to, and that just plays into their narrative. They've been demonizing Los Angeles and California in particular. They've been demonizing Chicago, and New York is always a target, right?
Sure.
Trump is just mad at New York because they kicked him out.
Pretty much.
But Chicago has been a hot button flashpoint for conservatives for a long time to say, look, they don't care that all the guns are coming from Mississippi. They don't care that, the violence is being exact. Yes, it is.
All the guns in Chicago from Mississippi.
The huge percentage of the illegal weapons that were coming in Chicago were coming through being purchased in Mississippi.
Huh.
And it was kind of a pipeline coming through there, and they were coming from not only Mississippi, but that was one of the biggest places. But they were coming from Mississippi and Alabama and Tennessee and other states that had these very loose laws about being able to get guns. And then they were taking them back to Chicago, and that's for the guns they were finding on the street were those guns. So, but the concept of nonviolence worked. I saw this article this week, and I don't remember who the guy was, but he was talking about, giving advice to protesters and saying, carry American flags. Let it be known you're an American. And he used the words, this guy here used the words flag bearers instead of rioters. You need people carrying the American flag respectfully. You need people who are, giving speeches, and you need people who are, willing to stand there and take the abuse without responding to it.
Taking the abuse, that's a hard thing to ask for a lot of people.
It is, but that's what John, what's his name? John Lewis did. He took the abuse. It's what many of the people on that bridge did that turned the tide. It wasn't, they didn't fight back. And when you don't fight back, the people who are fighting you and swinging at you look stupid.
All right, let's see what the rest of this guy has to say.
Radicals, we are mothers, workers, neighbors, trying to protect our homes from the federal aggression, and you don't need to agree with our politics to see that our humanity is being violated. That's real. That's real, right? Because we need to stay in an anchor place. This is about LA, not DC. Okay, emotion over ideology. Center immigrant stories, children's drawings, elders testifying, and literally frame ICE as an uninvited foreign force in a city that never gave consent. We're at war with the camera. That's what I'm trying to get y'all to get. I'm trying to get y'all to get it. We're at war with the camera. It has nothing to do with anything going on over there. It's not even in the best spot. Like the whole riot. Not even in the best spot. But the camera's vulnerable. So, any public altars for detained families, candlelight visuals overpowering riot gear, important. Any mothers in prayer circles versus soldiers, a haunting inversion, important. Any legal observers in neon vests, non-violence made hyper-visible, important. Drone footage of peaceful marchers being surrounded to trap the state in its own excess. That's the way to do this, right? The thing is that people got to understand that we also have to have a refusal to flinch. So his whole game is to escalate until we react destructively. That's basically the whole game. So, win at this game. Discipline silence at tense moments. Refusing to chant when cameras arrive. Making protesters look more trustworthy than the people in uniform. All of that actually matters in causing a narrative breakthrough. See, but this is what victory conditions actually look like. And it's not going to be found in the cheering. No, nothing like that. But this is my scorecard on the event. It's a very tangible one. I would give it, this is not the most ideal event ever. It's just enough energy behind it to get it cooking. I would literally give it like a 4 out of 10, but the camera is vulnerable, and that's the aim. That's the aim. Any Democrat that's been looking for, or a leftist that's been looking for an angle at this whole thing, the camera is the most vulnerable it's ever been, and I hope that y'all have a great time with it. This is literally, I'm talking about, if you like the shit posters, this is your day. Like, you could have a ball here.
So let's talk about that. Let's take a look at some of the pictures from Facebook here. I guess I'm gonna see if I can make this fit more on the. Maybe not. I don't know how to make it fit on the.
Click the little arrows up in the right hand corner. See if that does it.
No.
Oh no, it's smaller. Sorry.
Yeah.
Click that again. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I don't know. Anyway, so this is Knoxville. A bunch of people, and here is a young lady who has got an upside down American flag here in Knoxville, which, if you look through a lot of these pictures, there's, that kind of stuff. But, okay, so we're looking for, as he's saying, like the people, the grandmas and stuff, right? The children, humanizing it.
Maybe in
right?
a purple stroller.
Yeah.
But you notice the one is both the Tennessee flag and the American flag behind. That's a good backdrop. The one.
Right. And, in this one, I mean, there's a lot, right? So, oops, got the wrong one here. Somehow
because it's Facebook, it just bounces around.
What did I do? Uh, yeah, here we are. So, yeah, these are their posts. Um, this is a story we could probably be talking about as well as far as the political violence is concerned. Good turnout, good signs. The signs are good. But these are, these, I wouldn't call these, they look like pretty normal people,
Right.
I totally believe this. Silence is complicity.
What's he say?
Speak up even if it doesn't affect you,
Right.
And his dog
Yeah,
has
that Twitter guy was one of the things that he was talking about was black people staying out of it. And there's a debate among the black community about whether they should stay out of it or not. And that's an interesting conversation. I don't feel like that's helpful to stay out, but that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I think we need people of all stripes to be visible.
I don't know why I can't focus in on that. So I was happy to see Knoxville. They said somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 people. People are taking on the taco. Yeah. Just normal old guys, at this one now. Like I think there might be maybe a vibes change on it,
Right.
Tim, yeah, this is a Tim Burchett. People going after Tim Burchett here.
That's a really good example of Tim Burchett.
Beavis.
Yeah. Because he's about that smart.
He's aggravating. So this is a thing, right? Empathy is our weapon, right? So this is kind of like what this this guy is saying. The camera, show things people can empathize with and sympathize with, and
exactly. I think that's one reason that I was so happy to see today that at least CNN was starting to show the human side of the impact of what they're talking about.
Here's the
grandma's pissed. I'm not taking your job. I'm just better at it. That's right.
Punk hates Trump. Punk is still around, I guess. That's pretty crazy.
It is. It comes in different forms, but it
does.
There,
Punk rises from the ashes only to kill itself. Because the minute that too many people start doing the same thing, punk dies, right?
Yeah, I say when I see stuff about Gen X, I'm like, and what's the band?
Gen X, my generation?
Yeah, our generation.
Your generation. You're on the front end of it. I'm on the back. I'm one of those weirdo exennial types.
Exennials, that's right. No, they're what's the band? The Clash. There's bring the Clash.
Rock the Casbah.
I don't think of the Clash, and then then when they start playing the song, oh yeah, I know that one. Oh yeah, I know that one. And I was like, okay, I was never a fan of the Clash, but
so I mean,
Prince.
This is still to me what we're about.
Yeah, exactly.
It should be.
There's a really great storyteller, Andy Offit Irwin. He does a story. He tells stories about his grandmother, great aunt. I can't remember what title he gives her. It's a fictional character that he made up. Aunt Marguerite, and Aunt Marguerite is 85 years old, graduated from medical school, and started a little hospital in her 80s. And he does this Georgia accent and this old lady voice, and he's really good at it. But he tells this story about Aunt Marguerite as a child and she had to do a research paper on the Statue of Liberty. And he tells this beautiful story that ends with, the quote of the poem. And I remember he told that story for the first time at the National Festival. It was literally the first time he told it publicly. And he was following somebody who had just torn everybody's hearts up, and just this beautiful story. And I was thinking, poor Andy, he's got to get up and follow that. And man, did he nail it, because he was able to say, this is who we are. And this is who we have been for all these years. And it's just powerful to think about those words and what they mean for us as a nation.
I mean, I agree. I mean, that's what we still are.
And,
we're a nation of immigrants.
Putting those words on that statue, that wasn't a part of the French giving us a statue. That was something Americans put on, and it was kind of a thumb your nose.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take whoever you got. Send
Right.
us you're poor, you're tired, you're hungry. And
again, I thought that's what we were.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
LNN.
What is that? Is that LNN?
Yeah. And there's that lady again. We might be back. Oh no, still got more pictures.
If you're down there, you're not far away from the curious dog. I'm sorry, that's Britt.
But again, here's your grandma. Your grandma.
I know, it's great. I'm sorry, the cat walking on the stage.
So that's a lot. It was a good turnout.
Yeah, that is a lot. And there were 60 people in Kingston out there.
How many?
protesting.
60.
60.
That's a good showing for Kingston.
It is a good showing for Kingston. And then there's little towns here in West Virginia, just north of me, that were doing the same thing. And they had 200 at one courthouse in this little town, smaller than Kingston, and in West Virginia, West by God, Virginia. And I'm glad to see a man in a collar out there doing the same thing. And I guarantee you there were some of my friends, my colleagues out there.
I mean, I bet, right?
I've never gone to one of those where there wasn't somebody else from my conference clergy out there.
I mean, this is the truth.
Yeah, amen. No kings, no clowns. Education is power.
This has got to be a thing that
you know what that is from?
When
he went to England.
Yeah, they made a big old balloon of it. Yeah.
Yeah. The big.
That was in his first term.
Yes. Paws off women's bodies. I think I know that dog.
I mean, it feels like it.
Yeah, it does feel that way.
Some people have some really well done signs,
professionally.
Yeah, they knew some people. That's some good stuff there.
You got a printer in their family, graphic designer. Yeah, and my sister, she had called me the other day, and she's just really pissed at my older brother because he's, one of these folks that thinks Trump is doing all the good stuff. And she was just ranting and said, I don't even know what to do with him anymore. And I said, I know, you can't change him. I don't seem to be able to change him. And one of the things that she was saying is, so she had gone to this church. My sister, atheist, she's not going to the church for church. She's going because they had a rummage sale. And she wanted to see if they had anything good. So she tells me that other folks might not appreciate this as much as I do, but it was a Methodist church, but it was not a United Methodist church. And they were all wearing shirts that said the whatever Global Methodist Church. And my sister said, now, which one is that? And the lady, without being prompted about this, and my sister didn't come in and say, I have a brother who's a United Methodist pastor. She didn't come in and say, I'm a liberal. She didn't come in any way, shape, or form. She just, average average Joanne off the street. And she said, she asked the lady, which one are you? I know there was a conflict and, a division in the church. Which one are you? And she said, the lady said, well, we're the bad guys.
We're the bad guys.
Which I thought was, yeah. So my sister said, what do you mean you're the bad guys? And she's, well, what is it you think? And the woman said, well, we think marriage is between one man and one woman. And my sister said, well, you're right. And the lady said, you mean about the one marriage, one man, one woman? She said, no, about being the bad guys.
Well,
so my sister was going to ask them, if you want, I will help you when you're done with your rummage sale, because this is very common practice. When you're done with your rummage sale, I'll come back and we can load up all the stuff you want to get rid of, and I'll take it to some places and they'll get rid of it by selling it in theirs or whatever.
mm-hmm.
And she said, I was going to make that offer. She had apparently done this for them before in the past, and she decided not to do that because of what they had said. But instead, she went to the Pride Center there in Knoxville, and she talked to the guy who's in charge of the Pride Center, and she doesn't know his last name. She knows his email address, which is like John at the Pride Center or something like that. And she said, she went to him and she said, have you all ever done just a regular rummage sale for people that, come and buy, whatever household goods and stuff like that? And so, because they usually do some sort of maker's sale twice a year to raise money. And so now she's in charge of their rummage sale in August. But she was telling me that he was telling her that LGBTQ folks in Knoxville are scared to go out alone, to go to a coffee shop, to be out in public alone without, somebody else there. And, I haven't had that experience with the folks that I know that are in that area. But she said, well, is that local? And he says, no, it's national. So that's something I haven't heard, but that's all still the same stuff. It all comes from the same hatred. Hatred of immigrants and hatred of LGBTQ folks is not the same thing, but it all comes from the
same center point, it seems like.
Exactly, yeah. It all comes from that same, if you're not a white heterosexual man who has a woman who stands behind her man, then you don't belong. You're not American.
Yeah, like I said that American.
American, yeah.
One of the things that go ahead.
Well, I was just saying we went to a concert in Knoxville at Tennessee Theater last weekend, and it's a group called Home Free, which does a cappella stuff. And at the very end, right before the encore stuff, they did God Bless the USA. I just stayed seated.
You're tired of hearing it, huh?
It's become a
Is it fetishized?
Yeah, I think.
Is that what happened with 9/11? Is that we fetishized patriotism?
That's an interesting word to use, but yeah, I think that may be true.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that a little bit. One of the things that I watched a lot of the protests, just like the protests, not any of the crazy stuff. And a lot of people were saying, especially in LA, like, that LA was Mexico, at one point.
Right.
And
it was Texas.
And if you look at the demographics of LA, 47% Hispanic, which puts that being the majority, right? Because, between Asian, Caucasian, and black folk, in LA.
What
You're
was the
probably not going to
percentage?
get 47. So
47. Oh yeah, that's
you're
huge.
going to a place with 47%. Like, are you kidding me? Like they picked LA on purpose
Oh, absolutely. Because
because
it
they
can
knew it'd
inflame
be
those people.
volatile. Yeah. So
And
that's one of the things that
and
they're saying.
this goes back to that thing that the other guy was saying was one of the things you saw in the protests in the videos was a lot of Mexican flags and other Latin American country
Mhm.
flags,
Yeah.
and you didn't see a lot of American flags, and that would have been helpful.
Yeah, I have a different feeling on that. To me, I don't care uh, in this regard, um, especially in LA. Like me personally, I don't think that they should have to like. I mean, I get what that guy's saying. Like you have the opportunity to like really defeat the camera, so to speak. But
Yeah, that's what it's about. It's not about what I feel. It's about the
right.
people you're trying to reach nationally are the ones in the middle.
But I am of the belief that the United States is a multicultural
Yeah,
nation, and it's not like Irish folk aren't waving Irish flags around on St. Patty's Day. And
absolutely. And like I said, I fully agree with you that for me, it's they're they're just addressing and saying, look, this is who I am. This is my heritage,
right,
and I'm here, and
it
I
isn't
belong
like
here.
Mexico's here to conquer America, like
Right.
some
It's
people
not
would.
that at all.
Yeah, some people
But
would have you to believe.
for the folks in the middle that are swayable, you need to understand that the folks on the right are going to say, "Look, it's all them dang Mexican flags," and they're
Yeah,
going to articulate what you just said as if it were fact, when in fact what you need. So the visual of American flags in the protest, I think, has a positive impact on the folks in the middle because that's who has to be swayed. You don't have to sway me,
right.
that this is terrible stuff. We don't have to sway you that this is terrible stuff. We see the fascism. We see this no one is illegal on stolen land makes sense to you and I.
Right.
But for the folks in the middle who don't think about all that very often, it's who was that?
Uh, uh, this is Elon Musk
Oh, that's
before he got
before
his
the okay.
before he got his hair
It's like I know that
lost.
guy. Who is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
fraud, waste, and abuse. That's exactly right. Um, so for the people that are going to celebrate Juneteenth, I don't think we have to prove that Trump is a fascist. But for the people that are going Juneteenth, you know,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
just bringing up old stuff that we need to move past.
yeah.
Think about our national holidays.
Oh, this is a fun one.
Greetings from Salem. That's commitment to the statement. Think about our national holidays. We got Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Flag Day, July 4th, legitimate. But most of our holidays, in some way or another, center around military as America.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much more to us than just military power.
Sure.
Why
I'd
don't
like to
we talk
see.
about those?
I'd like to see more public kind of holidays that don't have to do with military success.
Yeah, me too. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. This guy has it
I'm
right.
not saying it's, yeah, that's right. I agree with that.
This is a good turnout for old Knoxville. I think that's the end of them. But do we have any commentary for anybody for the end of the show? Do we have any commentary about protesting, and how to find an empathetic place when people's emotions are high?
Say that again.
Do we have any commentary or advice for people that might be looking for be able to find an empathetic place when your emotions are high, when you see, like if you're anti-immigrant in this case, you're probably seeing the images of the bricks being thrown, and it's really really bothering you. So do you have a message for people that are, I guess, maybe falling for the fear campaign about it?
I think for me, it is look beyond what you see on the national media, because they're covering the if it bleeds, it leads stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And look at, what happened all over the nation, that there was 3 million people in peaceful
I think it's more than that now.
Yeah, the numbers keep going up, but it was at least 3 million people. Carla was talking about something today that was a Pod Save America. One of the Pod Save America guys was interviewing this person who's been studying the effectiveness of protests and
You're talking about
movement.
the 3.5% rule or something?
That was the one that she talked about, was that if you get 3.5%, well, 3 million people is 1%. That's a pretty good start.
I want to say
It's almost 1%.
I want to say no King's attendance. This is 2 days ago. ACLU says 5.
So it's up to
5 million. Over 5 million turned out across the U.S. Now, when you say, I wasn't sure that they said
3.5.
3.5 of a total population.
I'm looking for a man. I'm trying to build a woman.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is it 3.5% of a voting population?
Voting population, I think, is what it is. So, like, if you have 5 million,
there you're talking about, you're almost there.
5 million of 160 million potential voters. I guess, what was it? 150?
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, it was 160 million. I think it was less, because the Biden-Trump election was the most votes, and it was 80 something million to 70 something million.
Yeah. 150 million about. So, if you have 5 million, 150 million, that is 3%.
3%. Well, yeah.
So we will see. Right. I guess we will see.
And, of course, as you said, he has this ability to have plausible deniability, and
everything.
Also
he's so good at it. He
really good at blaming other people.
Yeah, doing that thing where it's like, well, I think I heard somebody call it like Schrödinger. It's like a Schrödinger's joke. You've heard of Schrödinger's cat.
Schrödinger, yeah.
Where you get to decide if the joke was, if you were saying a joke or not after people laugh or not.
Oh yeah, yeah. Is it a joke or not? It's a joke if it works. If it's not a joke, if it doesn't.
Yeah, something like that. So it seems like they always have some kind of mechanism that way.
Yeah.
All right, Billy.
This is working.
I think this is a good opportunity for us to get out a little early tonight.
Because, that never happens.
Yeah, usually we got people chatting with us to the end, but tonight maybe we had a technical difficulty that didn't get the chatters on, or I'll just have to see what happened. Jessica obviously did at one point.
Seems like it might be. She got on. Carla couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
I still have trouble finding it on YouTube, because if I type in pastor and atheist, there's other stuff that comes up.
Yeah. We should have you. Well, are you subscribed to it?
I don't even know if I've ever found it on YouTube, for that matter. And on Facebook, I have difficulty finding it.
Yeah, here you are on. I couldn't figure out what was going on with the chat though.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with my internet either.
So
We were
I had
having some thunder right as we started.
I had some issues today. So yeah. All right, sir. Thank you again for your time and your knowledge and your wisdom, and we will figure out something fun to talk about next week. I'm sure there's always something in the news these days. So for anybody who's still
Pastor Nathan, I can find our thing on Facebook, but I'm not finding
not
the
on
live.
YouTube.
Well, I'm not finding the live part on Facebook. I'm just finding.
What about if you go to my page specifically? Well, I'm gonna stop the stream anyway.
Yeah.
So usually that's where it's at. It's on my page, and then I try to put it on the. It's supposed to be simulcast to the YouTube, Twitch, and then also a link on the group page. So should be that. All right, we will catch y'all later.
Yeah, I found it on your page, but not on our thing.